في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقه ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من كتاب تقريب الأسانيد وترتيب المسانيد للحافظ زين الدين العراقي رحمه الله تعالى، ونفعنا الله بعلومه وبعلومكم في الدارين آمين. أنبأكم السيد أحمد بن أبي بكر الحبشي عن عمر حمدان المخرسي عن أبي النصر محمد بن عبد القادر الخطيب الدمشقي عن الوجي عبد الرحمن بن محمد بن عبد الرحمن الكزبري الدمشقي عن القطب مصطفى بن محمد الرحمتي الشامي عن الإمام عارف الله عبد الغني بن إسماعيل بن عبد الغني النابلسي عن البدر محمد بن محمد الغزي عن والده البدر محمد بن محمد الغزي عن شيخ الإسلام زكريا الأنصاري عن حافظ بن حجر العسقلاني الحافظ زين العراقي قال أخبرني محمد بن إسماعيل أخبرني محمد بن إسماعيل بن إبراهيم بن خباز بقراءته عليه في رحلة الأولى في دمشق في رحلة الأولى. قال أخبرنا المسلم بن مكي قال أخبرنا حمد بن عبد الله قال أخبرنا هبة الله بن محمد الشيباني قال أخبرنا علي الحسن بن علي التميمي قال أخبرنا أحمد بن جعفر القطيعي قال أخبرنا أحمد بن عبد الله بن أحمد قال أخبرنا حدثني أبي أحمد بن محمد بن حنبل قال حدثني عبد الرزاق عن معمر عن الزهري عن عروة عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت صلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم ليلة في المسجد في شهر رمضان ومعه ناس، ثم صلى الثانية فاجتمعت تلك الليلة أكثر من الأولى، فلما كانت الثالثة أو الرابعة امتلأ المسجد حتى اغتص بأهله، فلم يخرج إليه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم، فجعل الناس ينادونه الصلاة فلم يخرج. فلما أصبح قال له عمر بن الخطاب ما زال الناس ينتظرونك البارحة، قال أما إنكم لم يخف علي أمرهم، ولكني خشيت أن تكتب عليهم. باب تعاهد القرآن وحسن القراءة. وبسندكم المتصل إلى المذكور إلى الحافظ العراقي قال أخبرنا محمد بن أبي القاسم بن إسماعيل ومحمد بن محمد القلالسي قال أخبرنا سيدة بنت موسى المارانية قال سيدة أنبأنا مؤيد قال أخبرنا هبة الله بن سهل قال أخبرنا سعيد بن محمد قال أخبرنا زاهر بن أحمد قال أخبرنا إبراهيم بن عبد الصمد قال أخبرنا أبو مسعب أحمد بن أبي بكر قال حدثنا مالك بن أنس عن نافع عن ابن عمر أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم قال إنما مثل صاحب القرآن كمثل صاحب الإبل المعلقة إن عاهد عليها أمسكها وإن أطلقها ذهبت.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والعاقبة للمتقين، والجنة للموحدين، ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين نبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the choicest of blessings and salutations upon our Master Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Our author rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala is continuing with his chapter where he speaks of the Sunnah Salah that the believer should perform over and above the compulsory prayers. And he covered thus far many different Salahs. He covered the most important of the Sunnah Salah, which is the witr. And we had a discussion around the witr, the maximum number of rak'at, and how it is more virtuous than all other prayers. And he spoke about the rawatib, which is the Sunnah Salah before and after compulsory prayers. and the emphasized rawatib and the non-emphasized rawatib. And he also spoke of the Salatul Duha and Ishraq, and he spoke of Salatul Awwabin and various other Sunnah Salahs that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to perform. And it's important that as we read through these Sunnah Salahs, that we have intentions to practice upon them. From the Sunnah Salah of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that he did not personally perform, but he approved of the doing of Sayyidina Bilal radiallahu ta'ala anhu, was that he prayed 2 rakats after every wudu. Whenever he broke his wudu, he would renew his wudu. And whenever he renewed his wudu, he would perform 2 rakats of salah. Now, and this evening he is speaking about, this is the last chapter we'll be speaking about a Sunnah Salah, and he's speaking about the Qiyam of Ramadan, the prayer of Ramadan. And of course, when we're speaking of the prayer of Ramadan, we are speaking about Salatul Taraweeh. When the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that Man qama Ramadana, first whoever fasts Ramadan, and then also whoever makes Qiyam of Ramadan, then Qiyam Ramadan refers to the Salatul Taraweeh. And Rasul ﷺ, very interestingly, in his time, the Prophet ﷺ never performed Salatul Taraweeh every evening in the masjid as how we have it today. Which is like remarkable in a way, because those who pursue and insist upon an understanding that our Sharia is we do what the Prophet did and what he did not do, we do not do, they shouldn't be making Taraweeh in the masjid. Except for 3 or 4 nights in the month of Ramadan. Because Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam only made Taraweeh in his masjid 3 or 4 nights, and the rest of the month he did not make Salatul Taraweeh in his masjid. But our Sharia is broader than that. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not prohibit us from doing something that he did not do. And sometimes he had reasons behind his actions. And those reasons may no longer exist, as the case that we have at hand. So the hadith is the hadith of Sayyidatuna Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. She said that Salla Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Prophet prayed the Taraweeh Salah one night in the masjid during the month of Ramadan, and there was a group of Sahaba that prayed with him. So the Sahaba observed Rasul prayed Taraweeh in the masjid. So the second night, فَاجْتَمَعَ تِلْكَ اللَّيْلَ أَكْثَرْ مِنَ الْأُولَى. She said the second night the masjid started filling up. More people came to join the Taraweeh with Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then when it was the 3rd or 4th night, so she's uncertain. The Prophet either prayed 3 nights, and then she now narrates what happened on the 4th night, or he prayed 2 nights, and now she's narrating what happened on the 3rd night. She said that imtala al-masjidu hatta ightassa bi ahli. The masjid became so full to the extent that the masjid became يعني ضاقة. اغتص بمعنى ضاقة. It became almost restricted. There was no more space in the masjid of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this would be after the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam renovated his masjid. The masjid of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, after its final renovation in his time, is indicated in Masjid al-Nabawi by 2 things. At the back it would go the area where they put up the screens today, when you are praying under the umbrellas within the haram. So you can't actually enter the old masjid because they put up those screens. That would be the back of his masjid. And of course the Qibla, where his mihrab is, would be the front, and his home would be the left, and the other border on the right. On the pillars it's written there, هذا حد المسجد النبوي. This is the boundary of the masjid of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That was after its renovation, which is a very big masjid. And when they say the masjid was full, they're referring to that masjid after its renovation was full to capacity on the 4th night or the 3rd night, she said. And then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not come out to lead them in Taraweeh. فَلَمْ يَخْرُجْ. So people tried notifying Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they have gathered. So some shouted out, As-Salah, As-Salah, Ya Rasulullah. We're here to make Salah with you, Ya Rasulullah. The Prophet never came out until Fajr entered. When Fajr entered, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, after Fajr Salah, he said, Ya Rasulullah, people continued waiting for you last night, all night waiting for you to come and lead them in Salah. And the Prophet ﷺ responded, he said, Ama innahum lam yakhfa alayya amruhum. He said that the fact that they gathered was not hidden to me. I was well aware that they gathered in my masjid. وَلَكِنِّي خَشِيتُ أَن تُكْتَبْ عَلَيْهِمْ. But I feared that this prayer of Taraweeh will be made compulsory upon them. So therefore he did not come out. Tamam. That's the narration as Al-Imam Hafidh al-Iraqi transmits it over here from, what book is that, Shafi? Urwa and Aisha is? The Musnad of Imam Ahmad. No. So there's a number of discussions that are born from this hadith. One of the discussions is that, so when Rasul doesn't come out into the masjid for the night when he's not praying in the masjid, everyone agrees that the Prophet prayed his salah within his home. He was not praying his Taraweeh in the masjid, he prayed his Taraweeh in his home. So the discussion then is, what is preferable? Is it more preferable to pray Taraweeh in the masjid, or is it preferable to pray Taraweeh at home? Now, so scholars, they say that this hadith shows us that it's preferable to pray Taraweeh in the masjid. Why in the masjid? Because Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he only refrained from praying Taraweeh in the masjid for a reason. He feared that the prayer may be recorded as a compulsory prayer upon the companions. And had it not been for that reason, he would have continued praying in the masjid. And therefore, they said the hadith shows us that it's preferable to make Taraweeh in the masjid. And that was the madhab of Imam Shafi'i, and it was the madhab of Imam Abu Hanifa, and the madhab of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and it was the madhab of some of the Maliki scholars. Now, and because of the virtue of praying in the masjid, eventually during the rule of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala an, he gathered people in the masjid for Salatul Taraweeh under the leadership or under the imamat of Sayyidina Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala an. So he gathered them all, because what was happening during the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr and the beginning of the Khilafah, the Caliphate of Sayyidina Umar, was that people in Ramadan would come into the masjid and everyone would make their own Taraweeh separately. And some group will stand together, 3-4 of them will stand together, and 3-4 of them will stand together. So the masjid would have been alive and people will be making Taraweeh, but everyone will be making together. And some would be making at their homes. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he was not pleased with that. So he gathered everyone upon one jama'ah in the masjid of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam behind Sayyidina Ubay radiallahu ta'ala an. And the fear now of something being made compulsory is no longer there. If Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam has left this physical world and revelation has come to an end, then there's no way something can be made compulsory any longer. So the concern that Rasul had is no longer there. And therefore Sayyidina Umar gathered them behind Sayyidina Ubay radiallahu anh. And he gathered the women folk in one of the houses of the women folk, as well as the masjid. Women folk was in the masjid, and in some of the houses he appointed imams to lead them as well. Now, and when he observed everyone praying the Taraweeh behind Sayyidina Ubay radiallahu ta'ala anh, that was when Sayyidina Umar made his famous statement, as Imam al-Bukhari transmits from Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, when he observed people standing behind Sayyidina Ubay and praying Taraweeh collectively in Jama'ah, and they performed 20 raka'at, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, he said, Ni'matil bid'atu hadihi. What a splendid, amazing innovation is this. And that establishes that, first of all, it was an innovation. Now, every innovation finds a basis within the Sunnah of Rasulullah. The Prophet led his Sahaba in his masjid for Salah Taraweeh. So his action of gathering people is following the Sunnah of Rasulullah. But the form that it's now taking, it's more of an official form, and it's taking place every night. And they're reading 20 raka'at specifically. So the form that the Taraweeh is taking now, the detail, so to say, which may have been obscure from the practice of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh is now saying, what a splendid, amazing innovation is this. And you can spin the explanation of this whatever way you wish. But the fact that you must acknowledge that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh is telling you that not every innovation is misguidance. If he's calling it a splendid, amazing innovation, then Sayyidina Umar, who has the greatest understanding of deen, is telling you that not all innovations are bad. You can have an innovation that is good. And therefore the great Imams of this Ummah, they all held the view that innovations are of two types. Innovations that conform with the Quran and Sunnah are good, and innovations that contradict the Quran and Sunnah are bad. Therefore Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala said, he said, al-muhdathat ala amrain. Innovations are of two types. That which the Sharia considers good and that which the Sharia considers bad. So he said, ni'matul bid'atu hadhihi. No. He also added to that statement saying, wallati yanamuna anha afdalu min allati yaqumun. He said, however, the prayer that you are sleeping, because they prayed Taraweeh in the first part of the night, then they would go home to rest. And not everyone would then be up in the last portion of the night to perform the tahajjud prayer. Or the salatul, to pray salah at that time of the night, in the akhiri layl. So he said, that prayer that you are sleeping at the time when you're supposed to be making tahajjud, that is better than the prayer that you are making now. So Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh, in those words of his, he said that the time of prayer, the tahajjud time of prayer, is more virtuous than the prayer of Taraweeh. Even though there's going to be a discussion among the ulama regarding that. And even in the time of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam already, when the Prophet was not in his masjid reading Taraweeh, a group of Sahaba used to stand behind Sayyidina Ubay ibn Ka'b. And when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about it, what's happening here? They said, Ya Rasulullah, these are companions, they don't have much Quran to recite, they're not hafiz of many surah of the Quran. They are standing behind Sayyidina Ubay in Taraweeh. The Prophet said, Asabu wa ni'ma ma sana'u. They've done well, and what a good action they are doing to stand behind Sayyidina Ubay in the Taraweeh. Another narration clarifies that the incident in the masjid of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he led the Sahaba in Salah, actually took place towards the end of the month. In another narration in the Sunnah of Abu Dawud, Sayyidina Abu Dharr radiallahu ta'ala said that for the entire month Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not lead them in Taraweeh. Sahaba used to be in the masjid, they used to be doing their own thing, until 7 nights remained. Until 7 nights remained. He said, then Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam came out after Isha and he led them in Salah, hatta dhahaba thuluthul layl, until 1/3 of the night passed by. That's now if there's 7 nights remaining of Ramadan, then that would be the 23rd night. Right? He said, then فَلَمَّا كَانَتِ السَّادِسَةِ, when 6 nights remained, which is going to be the 24th night now, the Prophet ﷺ did not lead them in prayer. فَلَمَّا كَانَتِ الْخَامِسَةِ, when it was the 25th night, the Prophet ﷺ came out and he led them in Salah until half the night passed by. You want to know how long? How many raka'ah did he make? How long? He stood with them from after Isha until midnight. around 12 o'clock in Taraweeh. How does somebody say, yeah, should make 8 raka'at and go home? He stood with him until past midnight. When he did that, they said, Ya Rasulullah, why don't you complete the night in Salah with us? They said, Ya Rasulullah, لو نفلتنا قيام هذه الليلة. Why don't you complete the night standing in Salah with us? So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded saying, إن الرجل إذا صلى مع الإمام حتى ينصرف حسب له قيام ليلة. With the Imam until the Imam ends the prayer and leaves, it's right. That's a beautiful hadith to quote this coming Ramadan. Whoever prays the Imam prays until he completes his witr. Whoever prays with the Imam until he finishes his salah, quote it for them as if they prayed the entire night. حُسِبَ لَهُ قِيَامُ لَيْلَةٍ. Then the following night, when فَلَمَّا كَانَتِ الرَّابِيَةِ, the 26th night that would be, the Prophet ﷺ did not come out to lead them in prayer. And then the 27th night, he gathered his family and his women folk and people again. And he said that Rasul ﷺ then prayed with them so long that they feared there was going to be no time left to make suhoor, to take suhoor. What was that, the 27th night, eh? He prayed with him, they said, فَقَامَ بِمَا حَتَّى خَشِينَ أَن يَفُوتَنَا الْفَلَاحِ وَالْفَلَاحِ بِمَعْنَى السَّحُورِ. He prayed and prayed and prayed until we feared that we're not going to have time to have any breakfast suhoor. Ajib. And then he did not pray with him for the remainder of that month. So the interesting thing of the narration of Abu Dawud, it tells that the Prophet led them in prayer the 23rd night. And then he led them in prayer on the 25th night. And he led them in prayer on the 27th night. All odd nights that he led them in prayer. And in the other version of the hadith that we read, when the masjid became filled and did not come out on those nights, and he said he feared that the prayer, Taraweeh, may be made compulsory upon them. No. Some of the ulama, however, said that making Salah to Taraweeh in your home is preferable. Why? Because Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his predominant practice was that he made his Taraweeh at home. But we already answered that, and we said he only did that for a reason, right? So the reason can't be absent now, and then I want to say that it's better to make Taraweeh at home. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar and his son Salim and Qasim and Muhammad and Alqama and Ibrahim and Nakha'i, all of them, it was transmitted from them that they would pray Taraweeh at home and not in the masjid. Sayyidina Hassan al-Basri was asked, what's better, to stand behind the Imam at the masjid or to read your Quran at home? He said, for you to recite the Quran with your own mouth is more beloved to me than you listening to the Quran from someone else's mouth. However, in the Shafi'i madhab, we drew a distinction. Remember this whole discussion that we are still having. The first point is it preferable to make Taraweeh in the masjid or at home? The Shafi'i ulama, they, based on all these narrations and all the hadith and taking all these the statements of the ulama into consideration, they said that the detail regarding whether you should pray in the masjid or at home depends on whether you are hafid of the Quran or not. So they said, if a person is a hafid of the Quran and he doesn't fear that by praying at home he's going to become lazy, and him being absent from the masjid is not going to affect the masjid in any way, and the masjid already has its own huffaz that is leading the salah in the masjid, then it's preferable for him to pray at home. right? Which makes a lot of sense. If you're hafiz of the Quran, then in the month of Ramadan, you should be reading the Quran. So if you're not one of the huffaz that is leading the salah at the masjid, and you don't fear that you're going to become lazy, because if I'm going to make at home, and making at home is going to result in me missing a few nights, or cutting the prayer short, or because you must be someone that is disciplined. You must be someone that is, disciplined to pray Taraweeh every night at home. And it requires a high level of discipline just to do what? To come to the masjid, when you have so many people around you. Therefore, the most challenging thing in Ramadan is not the Taraweeh, it's just coming to the masjid. Once you're here, then it's easy. Because everyone around you is praying, the masjid is full of people. It's easy to make your Taraweeh once you come to the masjid. The challenging thing is getting to the masjid. No. So you said that you are hafiz, there's no place for you in the masjid to read, and you don't fear that you're going to become lazy by praying Taraweeh at home, and there's going to be you're not going to cause any problems in the masjid by not coming to the masjid, then it's preferable for the hafiz to make his Taraweeh at home. No. That's the tafsir in the madhab of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah ta'ala. Otherwise, for everyone who's not a hafiz, it's preferable for him to make Taraweeh in the masjid. Now, the next point is that the narration of the Prophet ﷺ doesn't speak about how many raka'at Rasul ﷺ performed. A hadith that is often quoted in trying to establish how many raka'at Rasul ﷺ performed is the hadith of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when she said that Rasul ﷺ did not perform, not in Ramadan or out of Ramadan, more than 11 raka'at. And we already discussed this under the hadith of witr, that the hadith of 11 raka'at refers to the witr of Rasul ﷺ. And therefore our scholars, they said the maximum number of raka'at of witr is 11 raka'at. As for Taraweeh, that's a different story. Now, we also know that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, he established people and gathered them in the masjid with Sayyidina Ubay radiallahu an, and they performed in the time of Sayyidina Umar 20 rak'at of Taraweeh. And in some narrations it says that they performed 23 rak'at. And of course what was meant thereby was that they performed 20 rak'at of Taraweeh and 3 rak'at witr. And that was the position of Imam Abu Hanifa, and the position of Sufyan al-Thawri, and Imam al-Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Imam Malik held a different view. We'll come to read the view of Imam Malik soon. No. And that was a consensus among the Sahaba, that Taraweeh, it's preferred that Taraweeh should be performed 20 rak'ah. When he gathered the Sahaba and the Tabi'een in his masjid, the masjid of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon 20 rak'at, there was no Sahabi and no Tabi'i and no scholar ever that questioned that action of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala. Which means that there is a consensus in this ummah that it is recommended to perform Taraweeh 20 rak'at. The only difference that existed within the first 3 generations of this ummah in relation to the number of raka'at of Taraweeh was, there were those that performed more. But there was no one ever that performed less than 20 raka'at. Right? So there's a consensus that it's recommended to perform 20 raka'at. And those who differed, they said you should perform more and you should not perform less. In addition to that, there's also a narration from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas narrates that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to perform in the month of Ramadan fi ghayri jama'atin, not in jama'ah. Now what's happening? Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas has access to the home of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you're wondering what the Prophet did behind closed doors, he said Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam performed in the month of Ramadan, not in jama'ah, 20 rak'ats of Taraweeh, and he added to that his Salatul Witr, his prayer of Witr. Now this hadith wasn't of the highest level of authenticity. The hadith was classified as weak, but it wasn't classified as an extremely weak hadith or a very weak hadith or a fabrication. It was just classified as weak. When a hadith is weak, then what does it mean? A hadith that is weak means that there is a 50% chance that the Prophet ﷺ actually performed 20 rak'ah, and there's a 50% chance that he did not. That's what it means. And so in other words, over and above the fact that Sayyidina Umar gathered people upon 20 rak'ah, and that was the practice of all the Sahaba in his time, and all the Tabi'een, and all the ulama, and all the scholars, and no one took issue with it. In addition to that, there's a 50% chance that, according to Abdullah ibn Abbas, the Prophet ﷺ, when he prayed Taraweeh in his home, he prayed 20 rak'ats, and he added to those 20 rak'ats his Salatul Witr. Right? Imam Malik, however, preferred that a person performs 36 rak'at of Taraweeh and not 20. Because he found his people, the people in Medina al-Munawwara, doing that. And they only did that because what happened in Makkah al-Mukarramah was that after every 4 rak'at, the people of Makkah, they performed tawaf around the Kaaba. Which is another innovation, by the way, that happened among the people of Makkah. And how many great ulama prayed Taraweeh in Makkah? They prayed 4 rak'ats, and after 4 rak'ats, the whole Jama'ah stood up to make tawaf 7 times. Another 4 rak'ats, tawaf. Another 4 rak'ats at the end of 12, tawaf. End of 16, tawaf. End of 20, tawaf. How many tawafs did they make? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. 5 tawafs. Right? 4, sorry, they never made after 20. Only after 16 and after 20 they were done. So they made 4 tawafs between the Taraweeh. Which is not easy, right? To stand up and make tawaf after every 4 rak'ats. So because the people of Makkah made 4 tawafs, nafil tawafs, after every 4 rak'ats of Taraweeh, the people of Medina, they said that we can't let the people of Makkah do better than us. Because, and it's not about, the objective of the people of Medina is not that they want to be seen to be better than the people of Makkah. No. It's about who's better in the eyes of Allah. If they are doing more for Allah, how can we do more for Allah? So what did they do is, in the place of every tawaf, they added 4 rak'ats. So they made 4 tawafs, and they added 4 rak'ats for each tawaf. So they ended up with an additional 16 rak'at. And they added that to the 20 that already existed from the time of Sayyidina Umar. So they reached a total of 36 rak'at of Taraweeh. Right? Look at the attitude of the people of Medina. Look at the attitude of Muslims. What do you think they will think of people that are trying to shorten the Taraweeh? They are trying to lengthen. What do you think they will think of people that are trying to shorten the Taraweeh? No. So they performed 36 in the time. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, in the time that he prayed in the Masjid of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam Salatul Taraweeh, he found that people were performing 36. And therefore his madhab is that the preferred number of Taraweeh is 36 rak'at and not 20. No, that was the madhab of Imam Malik. And it was transmitted from whom? Dawood ibn Qais said, I found people in Medina al-Munawwara in the time of Umar bin Abdul Aziz performing 36 rak'at, and then they would add 3 rak'ats of witr. So in total they made 39. And some said, we found our predecessors, who was a Salih Mawla Taw'ama, he said that we found the people in Medina, but this must have been a different Jama'ah, performing 41 rak'at of Taraweeh, and they added 5 rak'at of witr to that. So they made 46 in total. Now, and then the ulama say, whoever wishes to follow the people of Makkah in performing 20 rak'at, that is good. And whoever wishes to perform and follow the people of Medina by praying 36 raka'at, that is good. No. The interesting thing is here, Hafiz Iraqi, the author of the book. So remember, it's father and son. Hafiz Ahmad al-Iraqi and his father was Abdurragmaan al-Iraqi. This part of the commentary is written by the son Ahmad. He said, when my father became the Imam of the Masjid of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's like very interesting. I never knew that there was a time where Hafiz al-Iraqi served as an Imam in the Masjid of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. They said when my father took charge of the Imamat in the Masjid of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Medina al-Munawwara, he said that at that time, Medina was back to 20 rak'at. They were no longer performing 36. So when my father took charge of the Imamat over there, he upheld the practice of 20 rak'at as how he found people in Medina at his time. But then he introduced 16 rak'at of Taraweeh towards the end of the night, akhiri layl. Thus bringing the number back to 36 as how the original people of Medina were. And he said that practice continued during the lifetime of his father and his lifetime. And I don't know how long it continued. Now they make 10 rak'ats in Medina. La ilaha illallah. One of the things that we should develop within our hearts is ta'zeem for ulama and the positions adopted by ulama. For me to change something that generations of scholars did, I should have so much hesitation to try and change anything that the great scholars of this ummah did. And my attitude should be is, who am I to want to change what these great giants used to do? And man ana, who am I to want to change what these great people did? Because today we live in a society where everybody wants to do something different. Everyone wants to have the quality of ibda. You know what ibda is? I want to try something new. I want to try to do it differently. I want our masjid to stand out. I want that. And how can I find goodness in straying away from the ways of these great men? How can I imagine that I can create something that's going to be more virtuous, more beneficial, more beloved to Allah than the actions of these great people? The Sahaba, starting with the Sahaba, and then the Salaf as-Salih, and then the great Imams and the great A'imma and the great giants of this Ummah. Who am I to want to change something that they settled upon? And any reason that comes to my mind, I should ask myself, where is that reasoning coming from? Subhanallah. Then he said that the hadith also shows us that it's permissible for you to make nafil salah in jama'ah. Any nafil salah is permissible for you to make in jama'ah. We can end our class now, and then we can all make our salatul duha in jama'ah. It's permissible. But it's not preferable. Just permissible. All your nafil salah is preferred that you make it by yourself, unless it was legislated for you to make in jama'ah. Like Taraweeh is legislated to make in jama'ah. You ever heard the Prophet legislating you to make salatul duha in jama'ah? No? There's some masjids in either Indonesia or Malaysia where they make salatul duha in jama'ah, which is permissible, but it's not preferable. Sunnah salah is preferred to make by yourself, unless it's legislated. Like what? Salatul Eid, Sunnah, but legislated to make it in jama'ah. Salat of Eid, of Adha and Fitr. Salatul Istisqa, legislated to make it in jama'ah. Sunnah. The prayer of rain, legislated to make in jama'ah, not compulsory. Right? And Taraweeh is legislated. The Prophet also made it in jama'ah. So the general rule is all nafil salah is preferred that you make it alone, by yourself, unless it's legislated by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to make it in jama'ah. Therefore, tahajjud is actually preferred that you make tahajjud by yourself and not in jama'ah. You'll notice our mashayikh, the habaib, they never have tahajjud programs as such, because it's preferred to make it alone and not in jama'ah. Of course, when we make in our community tahajjud salah in jama'ah, right, then it's predominantly as an encouragement for people to make salah, especially in the month of Ramadan. And when we don't have these jama'ah programs, then many people that do attend will very likely end up not making tahajjud. And therefore we have these tahajjud programs. And it also facilitates for people to listen to more Quran, because if I'm by myself, I may not be able to read as much as the imam that is leading the tahajjud prayer. No. Otherwise, the default is it's permissible to make any nafil prayer in congregation, while it is it's permissible, but it's preferred not to. No. Other discussions on this hadith is that the question of the assumption is that the Sahaba, Rasul came and made salah, and then the Sahaba joined him, right? Without the Prophet calling them to join. He came out to make Taraweeh and the Sahaba joined him, and that's how the Taraweeh started in his masjid. So, can I pray salah behind somebody who did not make an intention for jama'ah salah? Yes, I can. If somebody is making salah, let's say, I find somebody making salah, I came late to the masjid, someone's making fajr, so I join him, and I make the intention to follow him. If the imam doesn't make the intention of jama'ah, is my salah still valid? Do I still get the reward of jama'ah? Yes. Even if the imam doesn't make an intention of jama'ah, if I make salah behind him, I'll get the reward of jama'ah. As for the imam will get the reward of jama'ah if he makes an intention to be an imam. And if he doesn't make an intention to be your imam, then you won't get the reward of jama'ah. Understood? How this hadith indicates that is problematic. Because there's an assumption that they join Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Prophet doesn't make an intention for jama'ah. But the equal possibility is that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made the intention for jama'ah. In which case, you can't say this hadith proves that you can make salah behind somebody even if the person did not make an intention for jama'ah. No, but it would be established elsewhere. The validity of my salah is dependent upon me, not upon the person that I'm following. No, the Shafi'i madhab is an interesting madhab. Even if you're following an imam in salah, you know, the imam's salah can be invalid and your salah can still be valid. Another interesting point the author takes from this hadith, he says, is for a person, a scholar or an imam to offer his congregation explanations rather than leaving shaitan to play with their minds. How does he come to that? The next morning, the Sahaba could have what? The Prophet ﷺ could have kept quiet. The masjid was filled. They said it was filled to capacity. And they're all waiting for Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to come and lead them in salah. Right? And we know without an atom of a doubt that Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam spent that night making salah in his home. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his nights of Ramadan, there was no sleep. So he was engaged in ibadah. But the Sahaba don't know that. And they're waiting for him to come out to lead them in salah. And the Prophet could have just kept quiet. Like many times, the scholars have a tendency, they just keep quiet. You as an individual, you need to learn to have husnul dhan. If you have ill thought, that's your problem. You need to learn to have husnul dhan. In fact, when the student doesn't develop within himself husnul dhan of the teacher, the student will never reach Allah. The murid will never reach Allah if he doesn't have good thought of his teacher. So your Shaykh, you haven't seen him in the masjid for Fajr by way of example. That's your thing. You need to have a clear heart and clear thought and good thought of the teacher. Maybe he's praying somewhere else. You don't know. Right? Just have husnul dhan. However, Imam Nawawi, based on this hadith, he said, the hadith teaches you that it's good for the teacher to sometimes give an explanation. Like Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam offered an explanation. They're wondering, where's Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? The whole masjid is full. He's not coming to make salah with us. The Prophet explained that it was not hidden to me that you gathered in the masjid, but I feared that the prayer would be made compulsory upon you. He offered an explanation. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's already Ishraq, I suppose, no? Isn't it? No. I wanted to cover the next hadith as well this morning. Another important discussion in relation to Taraweeh is that in our madhab it's preferred for you to perform 20 raka'at of Taraweeh over performing less raka'at with more recitation. Someone will say, what if a person reads 20 raka'at of Taraweeh but is only reading a quarter juz, and someone else is reading 4 raka'at of Taraweeh but is reading a full juz? We say 20 raka'at is more virtuous than the 4 raka'at, even if you're reading more Quran in the 4 raka'at. In the month of Ramadan, the focus is on praying 20 raka'at. As I said, Umar radiallahu anhu, that is more virtuous. Even if the 20 raka'at, there's less Quran recited in that 20 raka'at. In fact, the idea of finishing a khatam, a juz a night or a juz and a quarter a night, to complete a khatam in the month of Ramadan, while it is something which is encouraged, and while it is something that is good, and it's beautiful to observe congregations completing a khatam of the Quran in Taraweeh, it was not the norm in most traditional communities. In most traditional Islamic communities, they don't read a khatam of the Quran in every masjid. And I feel almost that the maybe good competition that existed within our community, where every masjid now pushed to complete a khatam of the Quran, it resulted in giving people very little option but not to complete Taraweeh. Someone that cannot stand very long in Salah, or someone that has a busy working schedule, or whatever the case may be, when we don't give people opportunities to perform 20 raka'at very quickly, as how many of the old masjids used to do in our community, we are forcing people not to stand for full 20 raka'at. If every masjid wants to read a khatam, and every masjid is going to have long Taraweeh, then what about the person that doesn't want to make long Taraweeh? Which, by the way, happens to be most people in our community. Right? Most people in our community can't stand long in Salah. So what tends to happen is they leave after 6 rak'ats, or after 8 rak'ats, or after 10 rak'ats, or after 12. And I honestly believe that we need more masjids in our community that read short Taraweeh. And short Taraweeh is not even half a juz. Short Taraweeh is very short. Like if you look at Shaykh Dhafir in Mount View Masjid, they read short Taraweeh and the masjid stays full from the beginning to the end of the month. I'd read from Wadduha down, or read from Alam Tara Kayfa twice. Many traditional masjids, they used to read Alam Tara Kayfa till Nas in first 10, and again in the second 10, Alam Tara Kayfa till Nas. And that option must be given to people. It's unfair to expect the whole community must come to every masjid where they're reading a full khatam of the Quran. Like I believe in every certain, what do you call it now? Radius. You should have at least 1 or 2 masjid that's making short Taraweeh, so that people can perform their 20 raka'ah, which is more virtuous, and go home. But to have every masjid wanting to read a khatam, that doesn't give people an opportunity to go to a place where they can read shorter Taraweeh. In the city of Tarim, the people of Tarim are known for their piety. They are known for their ibadah. They are known for spending the nights awake in worship. Right? In that blessed city of ilm and knowledge and taqwa and piety, most masjids in their Taraweeh don't read a full juz every night. Within the masajid, they'll recite in a khatam during the course of the day, and every night in Taraweeh they complete a khatam. But it's very short. Sayyid Habib Umar, his Taraweeh is the longest in the whole city of Tarim. He reads about just under 2 juz every night in Taraweeh. For the month of Ramadan, he finishes 2 khatams in Taraweeh. Taraweeh alone. And his Taraweeh is the longest. Every other masjid is shorter than his. And all the traditional masjids just have short Taraweeh. And then they split the Taraweeh up throughout the night. Every masjid have the Taraweeh at a different time. So some masjids 1 hour after, some masjids would be 2 hours after Maghrib, some would be 3 hours, some 4, some 5, some 6. Some masjids at 12 o'clock they make the Taraweeh, some at 1 o'clock they make Taraweeh. So throughout the night you have masjids making the Taraweeh, but it's all short Taraweeh. So what happened in our community is that people that don't have the himmah to stand long in Salah, we're almost forcing them not to complete the 20 rak'ats of Taraweeh, because we're not giving them an option of a 20 rak'at that can be performed swiftly. And again, the good example to quote in this regard is Shaykh Dhafir in the Mount View Masjid. Their people perform 20 rak'at from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. Ya Rabb, Allah grant us tawfiq. The next hadith that he read, I can't get into it now, but it speaks about the Hafiz of the Quran and his relationship with the Quran, which is very important. And we touch on that next week, inshaAllah. Tabaraka wa ta'ala. May Allah grant us many more Ramadans. May we be in the masjid for many more Taraweehs and many more Tahajjud. The month of Shawwal is drawing to an end. May we continue benefiting from what we have harvested in the month of Ramadan. Allah grant us a special relationship with Quran and with Salah and with the masjid and with the scholars. I think that's the discussion on Taraweeh for now. May Allah make us from the people of knowledge inwardly and outwardly, and from the people of amal. May Allah make ibadah beloved to us. May we always desire to do more and to increase in goodness. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. في هذه النوايا بمن وسلفنا صالح وأنا سيد الحبيب عمر وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله.